I went back home for Thanksgiving, so you're gonna have to endure a video from the void, in between time and space. By now you're probably familiar with the Warhammer commanders. They've been spoiled for a while now and they just came out in paper. And as fun as it is to play the precons for a bit, eventually you're gonna want to build the actual decks for the cards. Well, instead of me going through every painstaking detail on how to build a handful of these commanders, I'm gonna show you some of the suggestions I have for all of them. This is how to build the Warhammer commanders. Going in alpha order, we start with Abaddon the Despoiler. I'll warn you now that the pronunciations aren't getting any better. Abaddon breaks down into two key ideas. One is Cascade. Cascade is a lot of fun, especially if you're looking to play a powerful yet chaotic deck. It might not do what you want, but you won't do what you want powerfully. You're going to need to lean into ramp so you can efficiently cast these high mana value spells, and then also cascade into spells that are still potentially pretty large. That second life loss part you don't worry too much about. You're still kind of worrying about it because you have to have the pieces to make it work, but we're going to get to the point where like 10 damage to everyone is totally reasonable. A card I'd recommend for something like this is Rakdos, Lord of Riots. He has a similar effect where the more we've slapped our opponents, the more of a bonus we get. And then we run cards like Spawn of Mayhem or cheaper versions like Spear Spewer or Thermal Alchemist, because all of this indiscriminate damage that they're doing is helping us. Next up is Anrakyr the Traveller. This is a pretty basic build, but just because it's basic doesn't mean it's not powerful. We're cheating out artifact spells when we attack, so I immediately go to Voltron. We're running some great pieces of equipment, and we have to make sure that a handful of these are giving the commander lifelink so we can gain back the life we're losing. Aside from an equipment-heavy version of Voltron, we're also leaning into artifact themes. Be'lakor the Dark Master is pretty easy, but gives us a decent amount of flexibility. They want us to play demons, so we play demons. We also run some cards that flicker and blink, so we can get more card draw and deal more damage. Belisarius Cawl wants us to play tokens and wants us to play artifacts. They can certainly share a symbiotic relationship where we play cards that make tokens and then make tokens cool, alongside with just playing an artifact theme. But we can also have tokens that are artifacts, and then we can have artifacts that care about tokens. The world is our oyster. Just stay away from that first ability because it's pretty bad unless it's the only thing you can do. Celestine the Living Saint. How is this card not an angel? This is a pretty simple idea that this commander gives a lot of value to. Again, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's bad. Life gain has been around forever, and there are tons of ways to gain ridiculous amounts of life. We should be able to bring back even the biggest creatures, and then eventually we'll blow everyone up with Aetherflux Reservoir. Commissar, Severina, Raine has some problematic flavor it seems, but if you can look past this card is amazing. This card was built for white-black tokens, which we've had many amazing renditions of. Like how about Teysa Karlov, or this other version of Teysa? We don't really talk about this third version of Teysa. White-black tokens is one of my favorite deck types in Commander. You get to see this binary play out in action. You have the white side making just massive armies, and then the black side says, do you really need that many bodies? Like, think about it. If we can kill our opponent by attacking them with 3 creatures, then why do we need 10? Then we sacrifice them to get mana, draw cards, and other goodies, which then makes more bodies. And then we have a billion triggers. It's a really fun archetype, and I think this card would do a really good job at being the lead singer. Deathleaper, terror weapon, is just straight up weird. They pretty much want to be the face of Haste Tribal. There are a lot of cool cards with haste, and equally there are a lot of cool cards that give haste, so you don't have to worry about everything in the deck having haste on the side. I think my main concern with this deck would be running cards that can flicker, or at least make a lot of token copies, because without these you're going to run out of steam. I actually already made a video about Ghyrson, Starn, Kelermorph. If you want to watch that, click the eye. Illuminor Szeras is a bit tricky. Because they care about mana value, tokens won't do anything here. We're in mono black, so this is the best color to be in for reanimation and for gaining advantage off of killing our own stuff. Next is Imotekh the Stormlord. We need to play self-mill before we can even start to think about that first ability. We can then exile them or bring them back in one way or another to get the trigger. The second ability is quite the doozy. There are some high quality artifact creatures that we can run here along with a bunch of great role players. Inquisitor Eisenhron. Inquisitor Eisenhron is all over the place but also ridiculously powerful. That first ability is a bit of a mess that requires us to jump through a bunch of hoops to get not that big of a payoff. That second ability though, wowee. Black-blue is a great colors for Voltron, and with that ability we're going to be making a bunch of tokens. Clues are alright. Drawing cards is fun, but that cost might be a hindrance. But holy crap, these clues might as well be hockey pucks that do nothing, because they can just break the game wide open, with cards like Academy Manufacturer. Not to mention Cranial Plating, which this deck is begging for. This deck would be disgustingly powerful, and we're not even caring about half the card. Not convinced yet? Time Sive. That's all I need to say. Inquisitor Greyfax shows off the Esper tokens themes that they were really going for here. There are stronger commanders in these colors for token decks, but if this is your favorite character, I think you can still make her a good deck. We're going wide, they have some alright removal, and then some card advantage. They leave a lot up for deck brewing that you could do yourself that isn't dictated by the commander itself, so that's a positive. Kharn the Betrayer is one of the most chaotic commanders I've ever seen, and I love it. We definitely have to go Voltron. We definitely need a way to goad it so he can't come after us. And then some pingers so we can change control more throughout the game. Pingers are actually pretty funny here because if they want to attack us with our own boy, we can just shoot him before combat and he'll go to someone else. Chaos on a Leash, Lucius the Eternal. I'm gonna be honest, this card is a lot of work for not much. Like if he had some extraordinary ability, then okay, but he's asking a lot from us. You can kind of play this like heads up and throw it onto a high priority target so another opponent will kill the creature and give us Lucius back. But as for deck building, the most you can really do to work with it is run a bunch of removal, and maybe run cards that like let him punch when he comes back in. Magnus the Red is probably my favorite commander out of this whole set. We're playing tokens, which is something that red-blue doesn't do often, but when it does, it goes off. It's a rare medium well done, and then playing into the strategy feeds into ramping out some crazy big spells. This commander is really well rounded, and if you had to build one commander just because you wanted a 40k commander, I think this should be the one. I think Magus Lucy Kane, first ability, is going to be forgotten more than it's actually going to be relevant. But I'm in love with that second ability. You can run this as a generic ramp fun deck that just has a bunch of X spells, but you can also do a lot of fun things if you made like Hydra Tribal. If you go the Hydra route, you can run some counter shenanigans, so maybe that first ability isn't irrelevant. Marneus Calgar is Value City. When I talked about Magnus the Red, I said they are probably my favorite commander here because if it isn't them, it's Marneus. Like a bunch of commanders here, you can probably just ignore the one ability because it really isn't worth your time unless you have like nothing better to do. In Commander, a typical deck breaks down into two major parts. What the deck wants to do, so here it'd be tokens and everything that comes along with playing tokens. Then you have the cards you need to play just to make sure that deck can do whatever it wants to do. It's like on a given day, you brush your teeth. Not because you really love brushing your teeth, but because you need to brush your teeth to stay healthy and be able to do other fun things. These parts in Commander are card advantage and ramp. When a commander is so explicitly created on top of either ramp or card advantage, you have a great recipe for something absolutely disgusting. Marneus is going to keep our hand full. Not to mention that in Esper, we can play cards like Ashnod's Altar to make mana out of tokens. And that old Marnie doesn't require creature tokens, so Treasure is going to pop up again and just go bananas. Mortarion Daemon Primarch is certainly an interesting beast. If you're new to Commander, you might be hesitant to play something like this, but in Magic, life is a resource. The only life point that really matters is the last one. And even then, we can get around that. There are tons of ways to pay a little life to draw cards, or ramp, or do anything beyond our dreams. This is a lot of fun to be had here. The only thing I would say on top of that is we need to think about some extra life gain just so we don't kill ourselves. Neyam Shai Murad is great if you want a political commander. Hey, I'll let you get the one card back from your bin if you let me slap you. And of course, after enough slaps, we can start killing people. We can also exile cards from our bin so they don't have too many options to pick from, assuring that we get something great. This card has a lot of moving parts, which often leads to being great. We can mess with each part of the process. Old One Eye. I just love that one. Here's a name I know I'm pronouncing right. Oh, One Eye. There's a classic deck type in Magic just called Green Stompy. You spend your early turns just making a bunch of mana, then you start playing these massive creatures. Big setback for massive creatures is that they can't always sneak by, but One Eye can really help out with that. And if you're really into this commander, I highly suggest you check out Stonebro. This lets you fit into a similar theme, except now we have access to red, so that lets us play cards like Quartzwood Crasher or Proud Wildwander. There's a lot of fun to be had in Trample Tribal. Szarekh the Silent King is fun for self-milling. Again, that ability is on attack, so we have to do some slight Voltron stuffs. They may be looking for an artifact, creature, or vehicle, and we can certainly play into that, but I think this should just be more of a suggestion. We can have a lot of fun just throwing cards into our bin and then going from there. The Red Terror, another great name. The way the card is worded means they're limited to how much we can mess around with it. I think pingers would be certainly fun to shoot at stuff, run some removal that's specifically burn based, and then there's a bunch of cards that's like damage is amplified, and then eventually Red Terror will be massive enough that we can just get in and win with it. The Swarmlord. These names are really hit or miss for me, I guess. A sacrifice theme in Teamer is weird, but hey, I've seen stranger things. This card isn't asking it outright, but we're going to need a lot of ramp so that we can keep playing the commanders over and over, and then possibly play out a bunch of creatures. Teamer Counters gives us a lot of options for something really powerful. The card advantage also works as a great form of insurance. People might not want to blow up our board if it means we get to draw 10 cards. Finally, Trazyn the Infinite might not be my favorite card here, but I would be lying if I said they shouldn't be considered the best commander in this set. Their name gives you instructions on what to do. All we have to do is aggressively self-mill. Grim Monolith means they tap for 3, and Staff of Domination means they untap for 1. So now you have infinite mana, and we can gain infinite life, and we can draw as many cards as we want. If that isn't enough for you, Gemstone Array or Jinx Choker paired with Magistrate Scepter means we have infinite turns. We don't even need to cast these cards. We just have to get them into the bin, which is remarkably easy. So the Warhammer Commanders. I think this futuristic, war-torn plane fits well within the world of Magic. I think we got a bunch of really cool cards from this set, even if this means we're getting 101 sets this year rather than the normal 100. So Warhammer, what do you think? Do you have a favorite commander from this set? I'd love to hear it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to bolt your birds.